What is good, everybody, man? Welcome into the Bluebloods official podcast of FCS Football Central on SI.com, Sports Illustrated, Fan Nation, myself, my guy, Coach Fred. Apologize for being a few minutes late. Me and Coach looking at some film, breaking some stuff down. We got lost in the conversation, and I was like, I looked up 3 minutes late. So apologize for that, man. Hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe. Follow us on social media if you're watching on X right now on social media, man. But Coach, how you feeling, man? Saturday morning, we saved the good topics for the weekend, and I'm excited for this one.
Hey, man, got my caramel macchiato, got my morning stick. We won't say the name until they become a sponsor of the channel. But it pairs well with the macchiato. Some good topics. I'm ready to get into it, brother. Sun's shining. It's been raining the last couple days here. Uh, Prayers to everybody there in Houston, man. Hope all is well. If we have anybody from Houston that watches us, hope everything's good for you and your family. And shout out to the Mulberry Senior High School Panthers baseball team making the state championship. Let's go, baby.
Man, I like it. I like it. Big news before we get into the top 10, because that's where we're going to start is our personal way too early preseason top 10s. We're going to get into Hero Sports top 25, which I know has some reactions. And then we're going to talk about top candidates for SWAC Player of the Year awards. We're going to talk preseason and postseason to end the show. But Coach, real quick, big announcement yesterday. NCAA 25 officially dropping this summer. We got the first trailer. Coach, I have an old Twitch channel that my former co-host Brandon, when we first started this show, we started for this. I think we're going to have to load up and run some NCAA 25 when that drops for the show.
I'm with it. I just got to get a couple days in because you can't just bring me out there cold because I kind of went away from the games and more the Call of Duty, PGA golf, and MLB is kind of where I went to.
I'll play some show.
Yeah.
When the show came back to Xbox, oh yeah, we were running leagues, all that for sure.
But I'm a PlayStation guy. I don't know how are you an Xbox guy? That
cross plays on.
It's
all good. Yeah, I think the new college football game has cross play. But yeah, we're definitely that might be how we're gonna have to do the mailbags from now on. Just load up and play some NCAA 25 and just take questions on Twitch like a few times a week.
We definitely got to get the first copies and do a watch party.
That's a fact. See, what I need you to do is get me all the files for Alcorn so we can create Alcorn, and I'll reach out to another SWAC school or HBCU, and we'll get some FCS HBCU programs in the game because they got Team Builder, so we'll have to insert those into the game.
That's big time, man. But like I texted the other day, well, when they did it yesterday, I hit them back, and I'm sure they haven't seen it yet because they haven't responded. But don't talk me to death until we have a definite release date. And I know we have one, but then it gets pushed back. Don't get me all excited about that and then push it back, man, 2 days before it's supposed to drop. And then the other problem that I have is, I don't know if you remember, you may be a little too young. You don't even remember Dusty Rhodes, but we used to have to get some kid would have all the rosters and then he would give you the memory card. And then that's how you got the jerseys. That's how you got the names. It already comes with all that.
Yeah.
That ain't fair, man. Y'all should have to sit through and do all that.
So with Team Builder, so the teams that aren't in the game, so all the FCS schools, I've been hearing that they're going to drop a deal. What is it? Is it a DLS or something like that, or the add-on or whatever you can buy later on to bring those teams in the game. But for the Team Builder, now all you got to do, Coach, is just go in and download the files. Like someone's going to create it on the game, and instead of going to have to get the memory card, you can just download it online and bring it into your game. Because it's kind of like with MLB, what is it? The Road to the Diamond or whatever. You can download other people's uniforms and stuff like that. Like you can create college teams because everyone's already kind of designed them. And yeah, DLC. Appreciate you, the watcher. Supposedly FCS schools might be in a DLC either later this year or for the next version of this game, and what I guess it'd be NCAA 26. But man, I'm so excited. Coach, I already pre-ordered mine. The second that link dropped, it was bought.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
I'm late.
Edition.
I got to get on that.
Deluxe edition, everything. They have a package. You can get Madden with it. I'm in a bunch of Madden leagues, so I downloaded that with a quickness. Didn't even think twice about it. But Coach, let's get into our actual topics today. What people came to listen to us talk about. Way too early preseason FCS top 10 rankings. Coach, I'll kick this off because I already submitted my ballot. We're going to talk about the Hero Sports top 25 later. My ballot was included in that, along with my guy Daniel and Sam Herder. You met Sam down in Frisco for the Natty, man. Does some of the best work in the FCS in terms of media. Coach, I'll start at 10 because I think that it might be a little bit more dramatic that way for me. I got Chattanooga at 10.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a team that is probably my preseason favorite for the SoCon this year. Returning quarterback, elite wide receiving core, offensive line is always strong. I think they return a lot of size and experience on the offensive line. Might have an NFL prospect on the interior of that offensive line. Defensively, they're really, really strong interior, coach. And you know how hard it is to build strong interior defensive linemen at the FCS level. They probably got one or two of the best in the country. So I really like them there. Secondary is going to be extremely talented, especially at the safety position. When I look at the SoCon, coach, Furman has a lot of question marks. Sanford's replacing another quarterback and needs to upgrade at wide receiver. We know Western Carolina is going to be there, coach, but there's still question marks on how they're going to replace Desmond Reed, some of those weapons on the outside like Sincere Lee. So I got Chattanooga at 10. I think they're going to win the SoCon. The SoCon winner is going to be top 10 at the end of the year. So I got them at 10. At 9, I have a school I've talked about on the show before. I got Central Arkansas at 9. If they're a school, coach, that I think is either going to be, dang, like Blue was on it. Blue predicted them to be the breakout team of the year, or we're going to look back and I'm just going to have to admit that it was a major miss for me. And I've had that happen both ways, but I've talked about it before, coach. Returning quarterback who's probably going to be a borderline preseason All-American. Two of the best running backs in the country. Shunderick Powell had one of the best seasons in FCS history 2 years ago, and last year still topped 1,000 yards. You have a former All-American in Darius Hell as his backup. You return a majority of your offensive line. You arguably got the best defensive player in the country in David Walker at edge rusher. You have an NFL-type safety in Tamarian Wilson in the back end. I think Central Arkansas has all the makings of a team that is going to compete not just for the UAC title, coach, but can make a run to the quarterfinals, potentially even have a UAlbany type season where they make a shocking run to the semifinals, in my opinion. At 8, coach, I have Idaho here. I think there's a huge divide, coach, between the elite teams in the country and the rest of the country. As much as they've lost some weapons offensively, coach, they've returned the entire offensive line. They returned almost all of the defensive line. They returned both starting safeties. They returned a majority of their linebackers. As much as people want to say Idaho lost a lot, coach, they returned some of the most talent in the FCS. I'm pulling it up here, coach, because Timothy did a good job of this. Coach, they return over 900 offensive snaps, even losing their Giovanni McCoy.
Oh.
They return all 5 starters on the offensive line, return their starting tight end. Their quarterback, Jack Lane, actually started 3 games last year. When McCoy got hurt. They also added Abraham Williams, All-American kick returner. We talked about him on the last episode. They add a strong addition at corner, Corey Thomas, who started multiple years at Northern Iowa. KJ Trujillo from North Alabama, all-conference cornerback from North Alabama. They add Nate Thomas at running back, coach, multi-year starter at South Dakota. And they got a guy with some playing experience from Washington State at wide receiver too. I think defensive line is going to be their strength. You got Keyshawn James coming back at defensive end, Dallas Alfava at defensive tackle, Malachi Williams at defensive end. I really, really like Tommy McCormick at safety as well for Idaho. So I know that might seem like a stretch. And so I really, really like Idaho, coach, even though that they did lose some significant contributors, especially like anytime you lose a Giovanni McCoy, it's tough. This one will be shocking to you, coach. At 7, I got South Dakota. And I thought that they could be overrated. I still don't like them as a top 5 team, but coach, I talked about the divide. Would you, I don't think right now, looking at the roster, you would take Central Arkansas, Idaho, Chattanooga, William and Mary, Southern Illinois, Incarnate Word, Weber State over South Dakota right now. Even though you might not think they're a national title contender, they're still a top 10 team as we talk right now without seeing anyone on the field. Aiden Bowman could be prime for a breakout year. They've returned some talent at running back, returned some talent at on the offensive line. I like Carter Bell at wide receiver as well. Probably going to be a preseason All-American for some outlets. The one question for me for them, coach, is how do they replace a Miles Harden on the outside at corner? And how do you replace the MVFC Defensive Player of the Year and a Brock Moguson at linebacker? That's a big, big question mark. And that's why I have them at 7. I think that's kind of low compared to, like, I think Sam had them top 5. Craig Haley had them top 5. Our guy, Kevin Marshall in the chat, I don't think he's released his top 25 yet, but I would expect South Dakota to be somewhere in the top 10, maybe even top 5 for him as well. So I got South Dakota at 7. Coach, when we get to 6, I got Sacramento State. I think I've spent a lot of time talking about I'm very, very high on the Hornets this year. I think Caden Bennett was one of the more underrated players in the country last year at quarterback. They've returned some really, really good talent at wide receiver. And then I think defensively, under Andy Thompson, who was the defensive coordinator before he became the head coach, he's got them playing out of their mind. And I really do think that they're going to be primed for a big year. You look at the defensive line, they returned 6-7 guys with real playing experience, coach, almost 1,000 snaps returning on the offensive side of the ball. All-American offensive lineman Jackson Slater. Jared Gibson comes back at wide receiver. Aiden Meat comes back at tackle. Devin Gandy comes back at wide receiver. And then I talked about their transfer portal additions. Mervin Kenyon from Idaho, starting safety, all-conference guy. You also get Will Leota, an all-conference linebacker from Utah Tech. I really, really think Sacramento State's going to be extremely underrated by a majority of the other people. And I really do think this is a team that, despite not having historical playoff success, has the roster to make a run if things come together. But before we get into my top 5, coach, I'll let you take over here.
So, my opinion, I like what you did with some of them, but some of them my opinion just differs from you. So hold on to your socks. I think that Tarleton is going to shock a lot of people. I think the way that they put up points, I think, with what they return, I think they are next up and coming. Before we see anybody on the field, I like Tarleton at 10. I am really, really starting to get onto the UCA train. Again, an offensive guy. I love what they do offensively, and I think they just play with a different swagger. At home, of course, they've got to take care of some road woes, but I got them at my number 9. And at 8, and I'm surprised, I really thought you were going to have them in your top 10, Incarnate Word.
They're my top 15. I got them my top 15.
Okay.
I just got to see a little bit more on the fight. We can't have what happened against Nichols and you allow 400 yards rushing.
Okay. I can dig it. I can dig it. Now at 7 is where it gets a little dicey, because I have Montana and Chat at 7 for me. I know Montana, I get it, but they lost a lot, even though they bring back a lot. I get it. But your signal caller has to be a guy that can get you a few wins by himself, like the kid last year did for them. So I have a tie at 7. 6, hold on to your seats. But this is a team that I thought you were really high on as well. Salukis.
They're 12 for me.
Okay. So we're in the same stadium, so to speak, with our picks. I like them at 6. And I felt everything you were saying with South Dakota, which is why they're at 5 for me. And so that's my 10-5. And I think the only thing that you probably shaking your head on more so than anything is my number 10 spot. That's Tarleton.
That's high.
But I like them. I think they're going to light up scoreboards. I think they're going to surprise some people. I'm not saying they're going to be top 10 defensively. They will definitely be top 10, if not top 5 offensively. And that's all you got to do is just give yourself a chance. And if they get people to play in their pace, that gives them a chance every week they step on the field.
I mean, I don't think you're the only person high on Tarleton. Top 10, I don't think you're going to see any of that. But I will say with Tarleton, I think they were 18th in the Hero Sports poll. I would imagine they're going to be top 25 in most polls that you see. I will say you're probably closer to the mean with Southern Illinois than most. I think they were 9 in the Hero Sports poll, which means that Sam and Daniel were probably a little bit higher on Southern Illinois than I am. Coach, my top 5 is not going to be a shock here, and I won't spend too much time. And I'll just start from 1 because there's going to be no surprise. South Dakota State's at 1. I think when you win 2 back-to-back national championships, you're going to be at number 1. North Dakota State's at 2. We've talked about they're probably going to be the biggest challenger to the Jacks. They got a lot of returning talent, especially on the offensive side of the football. I do have questions about wide receiver, but we'll see. And defensively, listen, man, Cole Wisniewski is probably one of the best defensive backs in the country. You return multiple guys at linebacker. Defensive line, you're probably going to have 2 or 3 guys who are going to be high all-conference, potentially All-Americans. North Dakota State's going to be loaded for a run at the national title. Montana's at 3 for me. I know you had questions that, saying that they lost a lot and things like that. It's still, they return the Jerry Rice Award winner at running back. They've returned multiple elite wide receivers, especially that guy, Junior Bergen. They have some guys defensively like a Riley Wilson, Trevon Gradney in terms of linebackers, edge rushers, secondary that are coming back. Montana is going to be ready. Now, the one question I do agree with you, Clifton McDowell was a game changer, especially in the regular season. In the postseason, I feel like he took a step back with decision making and things like that, but he won them some games in the regular season just because of his playmaking ability. And I do wonder if they have a guy who can do that. They're confident in their options coach. They had a freshman last year that they really, really like. We'll see if he's the guy. At 4, I have Montana State. Again, I just think that rushing attack is good for coach for 8 to 9, possibly 10 wins. I mean, they're just going to be able to run the football. They're loaded at running back. They're probably going to have a top 2 to 3 offensive line again. And I think they return some pieces on the defensive line that can really elevate what the potential of that defense could be. And at 5, another team I'm high on, Villanova. That's the team that made a run to, I think, the quarterfinals last year, gave South Dakota State everything they wanted. Defensively, coach, I think Villanova is going to be really, really good defensively. And I don't think enough people are giving them the credit that they deserve defensively because they do return a quarterback. And, coach, anytime someone returns a quarterback, people get real excited. Connor Watkins comes back. Jalen Sanchez at wide receiver. Lopez at wide receiver. But on the defensive side of the ball, Ice Waxer, Devon Marshall, Brendan Bell, Shane Hartzell at linebacker, who's a potential All-American type candidate. They got a lot of talent coming back defensively. And then even on the offensive side, you've added a guy like a Devin Smith, who's a very experienced weapon from North Carolina Central, led that team to the Celebration Bowl with Davius Richard. I think Villanova is going to be a lot better than people think, and they're my way too early pick for the CAA. And I think they're a top 5 team, which means I think they're one of those teams that is talented enough, depending on the matchups. We know in the FCS, even if a team's super talented, look at Montana State last year. If they don't have to play North Dakota State in round 2, they make a run to the quarterfinals, potentially semifinals. So it all depends on brackets. But Villanova is talented enough to make a run to the semis, definitely the quarters. So I got Villanova at my 5 spot.
Okay. Well, my 1, since you started that way, is no different than yours. They're the champs. You know how I feel about that. If you leave the champs, I think you come back the champs until you're beat and kind of go from there. We've had that discussion before, but this one it actually holds true because they are still capable of holding that spot. And then you got North Dakota State. I think this is a revenge tour. I think they have a lot to prove. They bring back a lot. Like I said, the only question would be when they get in those games and they have to throw the ball, can they do it? And I don't think that'll be tested early. I could be wrong, but I don't think that'll be tested early. I think they're going to get a real shot in the arm when they pull off the upset of the year opening week. I think a lot of people are kind of sleeping on them. Montana State, just because of what you said, I think if they get that run game going and they start to grind folks and they can stay healthy, because I think that at the end of this slate kind of caught up to them, missing this guy, missing that guy. But I think if they can stay healthy all the way through, they're definitely a team that can make a run. And then I have 1A, 1B, Sac State. like you said, man, with that quarterback, and then us understanding what happened with him down the stretch, I think he comes back as long as he's healthy. I think they continue to be a top 5 team week in, week out. And they are in that 4th slot with Villanova. I just fell in love with Villanova during that playoff run. I think they were, I don't want to say blinded by the lights, but I think they kind of got to that spot and it was a little tough for them because of, first time being there, that kind of thing, that far along. So I got them at the 4th spot. And then South Dakota, I'm kind of like you were with, who was that last year? Montana?
in terms
I'm not
of
really I'm not really sold. I know you're good. I'm not like
yeah.
everybody else on that bandwagon. You got to show me where you are with it. And that's kind of where I am with them. So, that's my top 10. Again, I know 10 for me, Tarleton, maybe not for you, but I can dig it. I just think they're
Yeah.
going to win a lot of games, man.
Now, your guy Dustin's, I think he tagged me. Dustin, I didn't have them that high. I didn't have them that high. So that's for you, Coach. Dustin's not a fan. Now he's a Stephen F. Austin guy, so obviously he probably would rather Tarleton
Rev
not be.
Country.
Yeah, the Rev probably doesn't want Tarleton to be very good, but I agree. I don't think they're top 10. I do think that they can make a push to top 20, and they're 18. They're at 18 right now in the Hero Sports. New username Southland Rev. I like it.
My
Coach,
guy.
let's go through Sam. The Hero Sports dropped their top 25. I voted in it. Our guy Daniel, who covers a lot of CAA football, voted in it, and of course Sam Herder did. I don't even remember when like the official preseason top 25 comes out. I'm not 100% sure on that. I have to look, but Coach, we'll go from the bottom up. Listen, let's just say this: the top 5 is who you expect. South Dakota State got all 3 first place votes. North Dakota State at 2, Montana 3, Montana State 4, South Dakota 5. I don't think
Usual
it.
suspects.
Yeah, usual suspects. Now, me being one of the 3 votes, obviously the top 10 will look very similar because I was one of the people who voted in it. 6, Coach Villanova, 7, Idaho, 8, Sac State, 9, Southern Illinois, 10, Chattanooga. No surprises there. All teams that we talked about for the most part. So not a lot
But
to.
I'm not sold on 7. Even though I know you talked about it, and they probably should get you up there. And I'm an Idaho guy. I'm just not sold when you lose that much production, uh, unless you're bringing back, Randall Cunningham at quarterback, and then you're going to have you know, Percy Harvin coming in at running back. I just don't know if you can replace that to be that high. But again, I'm an Idaho guy. I got to see it. Got to see it.
You gotta be careful. You gotta be careful. Or you might lose your pass to the Kibby Dome if you're too
Yeah, yeah,
hard
yeah, yeah,
on.
yeah. I said no, no, no. I'm with it. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Now the 3 that received votes that but weren't in the top 25, Nichols State. I I don't think Nichols is a top 25 team right now. I could be wrong, but I didn't have them on my top 25. Elon and UT Martin were the other 2 honorable mentions, Coach. But none of them had enough votes to get into the top 25. Now, I do want to say, voting wise, we were not allowed to submit honorable mentions. So we'll kind of get into that at the end of this segment. Some teams that were in my honorable mentions. I can't speak for Sam or Daniel. Coach, let's just take these in little segments as we go upwards. At 21, we got UC Davis. 22, we got Weber State. 23 was Youngstown State, 24 Illinois State, and 25 Eastern Illinois. I'll say the one that I'm not sold on here, and and me and Timothy kind of had a conversation about this. I'm really not sold on Illinois State. And I kind of talked about that. What was it? A few episodes ago, when we talked about
Mhm.
potential overrated teams. I get it. They had a lot of close games last year, and from the people I talked to, there's a belief, Coach, that just because some of those top teams, you look at how much North Dakota lost, you look Youngstown State's got some question marks. If you can be that 3rd or 4th place Valley team, you kind of just get the benefit of the doubt because of the gauntlet you have to go through. As much as they do return some talent, I don't see enough right now, Coach, to put them in the top 25. I would have left them out. I don't mind them at 24. I'm not going to rip everybody for, believing in them. I've seen them as high as 14. I think Craig had them at number 14, which I think is way, 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 way too high, in my opinion. But I don't mind any of these. I will say I'm a little bit surprised UC Davis and Weber fell outside the top 20, Coach. I've kind of talked about UC Davis as a team that I think could take a step forward. I had them in my top 20, and I do think that they're a team that, Coach, I don't have the confidence right now to put them top 10. But if you told me you could see the future and they finish top 10, I wouldn't be surprised, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially when you got a running back coach who led the conference in rushing in only 8 games because he was hurt most of the year. They returned a quarterback. They got a loaded secondary for the Aggies next year. I think UC Davis is better than 21, and I also think Weber State should slide into the top 20 as well. Offensively, yes, I get the question marks, but defensively, they are going to have an absolute problem defensively because that's just how good they are. But those are the two teams I would say are a little bit underrated. I don't believe in Illinois State. I like Eastern Illinois. I think they're somewhere in that 18 to 25 range. I don't mind them at 25. Coach, you know how it is with teams that jump from like 1 win to 8 wins. Do you revert back to the mean, or is that the new standard of your program? So I understand the skepticism around Eastern Illinois, even though I do think they're super talented, like I talked about yesterday.
Yeah, and then you still have to. We talked about this early on last year when we got into the rankings. Are we playing to what we saw last, or are we playing to what has been the norm? And I think that comes into play. Even though as we're going through these things, we try not to let that come into play, but it does because to me, it's still way early. But to me, I think you've got to give them wiggle room, so to speak, to prove it.
Yeah.
And then you kind of hit on one of my points. When a team loses X amount, even though they bring in X amount, you know what they lost. We don't know what they're bringing in. Again, it's one of those things that's on paper and it sounds good. But, to me, the Webers and the UC Davis, I think, should be up a couple slots.
Yeah.
I think there's some people on the list that are higher that we're going off past stuff, tradition, history, so to speak. So, I mean, Delaware, I mean, are they?
Can I put, because that one in the group we just talked about. Let's move up a little bit. We'll talk about the next 5 and include Delaware in it. 20 is Lafayette, 19 Delaware, 18 Tarleton State, 17 William and Mary, 16 Western Carolina. I want to put this is why I didn't mean to interrupt you because I just wanted to put a little asterisk on Delaware. Sam told us we were eligible to vote for Delaware even with the transition. I personally chose not to vote them.
Okay.
So that means they're probably higher in Sam and Daniel's ballots. I didn't rank Delaware. And now let me explain, and then I'll let you take back over. My stance on transitioning teams, because they are allowed to have 85 scholarships if they want to in these transition periods.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you have extra scholarships, it's unfair to compare team performance to a bunch of teams playing with less scholarships. So I don't rank any teams transitioning. I didn't rank Jacksonville State. I didn't rank Kennesaw State. I didn't rank Sam Houston when they were transitioning. So it's just kind of my standard. The reason I let their players be eligible for postseason awards, but don't rank the top 25, those extra scholarships don't help individual players perform better. So I think their players individually should be rewarded at whatever level they're playing at, but I think it's unfair to compare teams that aren't on equal playing fields anymore. And that's why I chose not to rank Delaware.
I'm with it. I wasn't going that deep with it. I was just saying that, with them moving on, I just don't know if it's fair unless they just make some miraculous run on the way out the door to win it and, tell everybody bye on the way out to start ahead of those teams. Now, again, I'm not as deep in it as you are. I could deal with them being a 25 receiving votes because they are moving on. But then when you add your breakdown to it, get them out of here, man. Somebody else get that spot.
Yeah, That's how I feel. Now, we kind of already talked about Tarleton a little bit. Now, you do have
Way
I
too
don't know.
low.
Did you want this? Do you want this bet, Coach? Our guy, the Rev, said he wants a cigar bet on Tarleton. He said he'll pay it off in Frisco. If Tarleton makes the playoffs, he'll get you some cigars. If they don't make the playoffs, you owe the Rev some cigars. There you go. That's a bet, Rev. Well, we'll see you in Frisco, man, and we'll definitely see our guy Kevin in Frisco too, man. Shout out to Kevin, man. One of the best guys out there in FCS media as well. Talked about Eastern Illinois. I agree. The turnaround has been super, super impressive, and I think that's a team that's probably going to make the postseason this year. Now, Coach, when I look at this, I don't have really any problems. I'm a little surprised at William and Mary being so low. I thought they'd be a little bit higher. I had them in the top 15, but I don't hate it. I get the skepticism because they had such a bad year last year, coming off of a quarterfinals appearance. Western Carolina, I don't have any problem being in the top 20. That's about where I had them. Anyway, I really don't have any problem with 16 through 20, really and truly, outside of the Delaware, maybe. And if you move Delaware out, UC Davis would jump into the top 20, which I would agree with even more. So I don't have any problem with that. Let's get to the final five. We're going to talk about UAlbany at 15, Furman 14, Richmond 13, Incarnate Word 12, Central Arkansas 11. I'll kick this one off. I get it. I get it because last year Furman was that team, dominated the SoCon, all that kind of stuff. UAlbany did their thing, semifinal appearance. Way too many question marks, in my opinion, to have either of those teams top 15. Just personally, if we're not going to put UC Davis or even like a Weber State or a Western Carolina or a William and Mary or even a Tarleton State, I'll give you that one. Whatever. How do you justify? I didn't see enough talent that Furman brought in offensively to be confident that they're a top 15 team. Like I'll say this, Coach. I'm probably more confident right now. If you had to take teams with with turnover, I think there's a chance that Mercer, even with the first year head coach, has a better season. And let's say this. I know Sanford took a step back last year. I kind of trust Sanford to find a quarterback more than I do Furman right now. Because let's say what you want about Hatcher. If you can pick one position, Sanford's going to have a guy who can spin the football. They're going to find a guy who can throw the football.
Year in, year out.
I think Western Carolina should be above Furman right now in terms of if we're talking preseason rankings. I think they should be above them just because of the returning talent. And Cole Gonzalez coming back adds a whole nother aspect to that offense. And if you're going to trust somebody to find some wide receivers, it's Kerwin Bell. So I would say I agree, Kevin. That is perfect. In the ballot I submitted, Furman was 23. So me and Kevin are lockstep on that one. I thought they should be somewhere in that 20 to 25 range. I think top 15 is way too generous for them. And Coach, UAlbany, we talked about this. I do think they brought in some really, really good talent. They returned more talent than you would expect. But when you lose a guy like a Reese Poffenbarger, and then you lose in two edge rushers that were first team All-Americans. Rest in peace to my guy AJ, man. I don't know about that. I think that's a little too generous putting Furman and UAlbany in the top 15.
Game changers. And that would have been my one way too high, UAlbany, just because of what they lost in terms of production. If you can find two guys to replace that, I guess we'll find that out early on in the season. But to be in the top 15, I just felt like, that was a little too high for them.
Yeah.
A little too low for, Tarleton Rev. And then, Incarnate Words, you know how I feel about them with my top 10. But the UAlbany, again, in preseason work, I think we all get too worked up year in, year out on these way too early preseason top 25 type things. But I mean, it's part of the game. But
yeah,
I could see a fan base. I can see fans, what are we doing? Because I could bleed off into another topic, but I want to wait because I think we're already headed there with the top 25.
But We're gonna get there, and man, shout out to our guy Josh, man. HBCU Nightly, man, was our first episode of the Coaches Lounge as well, man. Shout out to Josh, man. Check out HBCU Nightly, man. Listen, MD is one of the best shows out right now. Shout out to my guy Banks and my guy Dave for that one. On I believe it's Mondays. Correct me if I'm wrong, Josh. And then of course Wednesday nights, man. HBCU Nightly dominates, man.
Go follow.
That's really why you don't see us go live on Wednesday nights, because I'm tuned into Josh's show on HBCU Nightly, man.
Go follow.
And Kevin, I agree with you there. Now, I will say the one difference for me, and Kevin, I just want to talk about from my perspective. I do agree Furman's quarterback did play because Huff got hurt. But the big question mark for me for Furman wasn't necessarily quarterback. It's running back, because I do think Roberto was a problem at running back, and offensive line too. They lost 2 or 3 guys that are in NFL camps right now. And then that front 7 was just devastated. I do think DiMaggio at linebacker is going to be solid. Evan, Luke Clark solid at DN, but those interior guys are the ones you lost. Like our guy Matthew was a problem at defensive tackle. When you go back and look at that Montana game, those D tackles really and truly dominated that game. And I don't know if they have the depth there. I know Xavier Stevens comes back, but they lost their top 2 or 3 guys at that position. I think line of scrimmage is more where I'm concerned, Kevin, for Furman, more so than quarterback. I'm with you. I think Carson Jones is probably going to win the starting job, but we'll see if he's a playmaker per se, like a Huff. And I don't think that team, that the ceiling when Huff was hurt was not as high as when he was healthy. So we'll see how he develops. But I agree, Kevin, that is a good point about quarterback play. Coach, we were talking before the show. There was a lot of talk about teams that people thought should be included and shouldn't. And Josh makes a good point. He said that Central's bringing back a ton of talent, but he understands they lost a 4-year starter at quarterback. And if anyone from the MEAC was going to be in the top 25, it should have been Central. And I do think that's a good point, especially given that if
they were a playoff team.
They were a playoff team, and Coach, they were dominating that Richmond game until Richard got hurt.
Went down.
And then listen, the wheels fell off at that point. But because what happened with Central in that game, going back and watching the film, I think defensively they were good enough to stop Richmond's offense. But what happened is when Richard got hurt, Coach, you've been on the sidelines before, and in the collar shirts, that it's different. When you're starting quarterback and a leader like Davius gets hurt, the energy gets sucked out of that sideline, man. It's gone. And it's hard
mentally. Your kids leave. Yeah, mentally your kids leave.
Getting hurt on a touchdown too, early in the game on the road, you have to generate your own energy at that point. And then also too, the offense took a little while to adjust to him being out. And what happened is the defense was on the field too long, and it just got away from him. I think the momentum just turned so quickly on Central's head. I agree. Now, Coach, and where I was going with that, we didn't get to submit honorable mentions. I know when I submit my ballot for Craig Haley's poll, the FCS Stats Perform poll, the official media poll, I guess, whatever, we don't get to submit honorable mentions. But when I release it on my website, I always like to put honorable mentions because I want people to realize, like, that way, Coach, because I hate what happens is, 4 teams drop out of a top 25, 4 new teams pop in. It was like, okay, well, where was your thinking on that? Where do those teams come from? So I always like to give my honorable mentions so people are like, okay, well, Zach had Morgan State at 28. Well, if 4 teams drop out, okay, that means if Morgan State keeps winning, they should be the team that hops in. Like, that's why I always like to give honorable mentions. I did a top 40, just compiling my rankings, trying my best to do it in preseason. It's so hard, especially in May. Some teams that I would really strongly considered. Mercer was a team that I think a lot of people are overlooking just because of the head coaching change. Coach, we talked about the running backs they added, some of the defensive talent that they've got from the portal, some returning guys that may not be proven right now, but I think they're talented enough to be big contributors for the Bears next year. I also, even though I don't think they're a top 25 now, I have to give them the benefit of the doubt a little bit. It's Nichols, and I know that I don't think they're going to win the Southland, but Coach, you got to give them credit for winning the conference last year, and they return a whole lot of talent on the lines of scrimmage and at running back. I think their ceiling is really capped by their quarterback play. I don't believe they have it. I think another team that was in my honorable mention is Morgan State. I picked Morgan to win the MEAC already. And I think the one thing that kept them out for me is just I got to see it. I got to see the offense on the field. Defensively, Morgan's a top 25 team on paper. It's just do they have a quarterback to get this done? And so I think Morgan's right there on the teams I was considering. I'd had Central in my honorable mentions. I'm with Josh. The thing I want to see is Walker Harris has all this hype. And Coach, me and you have talked about it on the show. Coach, you know how hard it is to replace a guy like that. A&M wasn't able to do it with Akil Glass.
Still,
yeah. I mean, it's hard to do that. Because who was the quarterback after Kincaid at Grambling? I don't remember the kid's name. I'm blanking on it. Like I see him, I picture him, I just don't remember his name. Someone put it in the chat. I know. But that's a matchup. And like Josh said, Morgan and Central could be a top 25 matchup if they win their out of conference games. So we'll see. I think Central was in my honorable mentions. And Coach, I know you're going to hate this one, so don't just stay calm. I had Jackson in my honorable mentions. I Hickbottom. That's what, because he transferred to Tennessee State. Thank you, G. I had Jackson in my honorable mentions just because, Coach, me and you have talked offline about there's still Jacoby and Morgan. Is he going to take that step? I don't know, but does he have the potential to take that step? Absolutely. And they are loaded at running back. Coach, I said last night, I was joking with Ken Clark and them, if they don't come out in 14 personnel next year, I'm done with them. You signed too many tight ends and too many running backs and too many offensive linemen not to come out and just run the football. So I think Jackson's an honorable mention. So if I go down past my top 30, Alcorn's in there, and I also have Alabama State is an honorable mention. I think they're somewhere in that top 42. And then there's another team that I don't think a lot of people are looking at, and I get it because they had a bad year last year, Eastern Washington. It's a team that we haven't really talked about on this show that is in a very brutal coach, man. We're hyping up Weber. We're hyping up UC Davis. We're hyping up Montana State, Sac State. The list is long for Big Sky.
We were on Eastern last year.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
In the beginning, and then it kind of tailored off. But they got a bad man in Efton Chisholm at wide receiver. I think this,
and he likes high dollar stakes.
Yes, high dollar stakes, and that's still one of the funniest stories I think I heard at the national championship. Shout out to Kevin Marshall, man. Again, I like Visperus at quarterback. They brought in a lot of talent at wide receiver, young talent that I think is day one. The question for them, the reason I can't take that chance with them right now, Coach, defensively, man, it's just it hasn't clicked, right?
Sure.
It just hasn't clicked. And I think a team that was in my top 25 till recently, Coach, and I feel bad. Listen, I'm sorry to this team. Tennessee State. Like I was trying. You've
been trying to drive that train. You really have.
Bro, I bought tickets. I built the train. I paid for everyone's money to invite them to the party. And then every time I turn around, someone's leaving.
Yeah. You've been driving that train.
If you add Terrell Allen back, if you add Monroe Beard back, if you add Jeremiah Josephs back, if you add Bryce Phillips back, man, that no brainer. They're probably like 20th in my poll. I'm there. But right now, with the losses that they've experienced recently, Eastern Illinois, UT Martin, I think both of those teams are better right now on paper than Tennessee State.
Yeah, until they prove otherwise. Yeah, definitely. You know how I feel about that one. And correct me, and then we can move on because I'm always the one taking it off subject. But I've been hard on this team, but I just think FAMU should have been in the top 25, if nothing else, 25.
They were
the season they came off of. The season they came off of, to cap it off with the bowl win, And you know how I feel about the bowl wins. If you finish number one, you should come back number one. I just think that because we're going off past resume for everybody. I feel
Yeah,
like their past resume warranted at least a 25 or a 24. Uh, and the school up the street, I can't believe you had them instead of FAM just because of the previous track record. Um, and that's just my opinion when we talk about that. And I'm going to always be brave, in my thought process.
that's
But
fair.
FAM, I think, did enough last year by winning what they did, winning the way they did. Should have been in the way too early top 25, and that's just my opinion. And I get the Morgan, I get the NCCU, I get
Yeah,
all that, but at the end of the day, they were the last man standing. So,
you're right. I think there's a strong case for that. Um, listen, and the reason I forgot to say them was because I didn't want to just say I had like 19 HBCUs in my honorable mentions because I
oh
didn't.
no, I knew that.
But
You know
yeah,
that.
but FAM was in there too. It's just when I look, so like, let me just give you. So let me pull up my top 25. So we'll just go from 21 to 25. 21 was Eastern Illinois. 22 was Elon. 23 was Furman. 24 Lafayette. 25 UT Martin. I think you could maybe make a case for Elon. The reason I changed my stance on Elon, and I was way off the bandwagon, looking at the returning talent defensively, especially, I think they're going to be better than a lot of people are giving them credit for. But you can make an argument that because you could make an argument they could be out of there. I wouldn't hate that, and I'd listen to it because I don't think my opinion is where it stops. Like this is why I love this show is because we could change our opinions on here. There's some shows where listen, the person's opinion is their opinion, and they aren't going to change it.
No, not at
I'll
all.
admit I'll admit I was wrong on it if it comes down to it. But I think with FAMU, it's just that.
And I jumped off that train
Yeah,
because
you
they've
did.
lost
I
so
was gonna say
much.
because you didn't even
They've
pick them
lost so
to
much.
you didn't, but I do like I said last show. FAMU ceiling still Celebration Bowl. Like I'm not saying they're going to be garbage.
Oh no,
It's
by
just
by no means. By
it.
no means.
The two things that stand out to me for FAMU, corner's going to be great. I'm not arguing anybody. Listen, Kendall Bowler. We're going to talk about him in just a second when we talk about the Player of the Year awards. A stud. The question marks I have for FAM are quarterback because even though everyone hated, I get it, including myself. I was not a huge Musa fan. At the end of the day, the dude won games, like consistently won games.
And he's the
And
only one that took snaps.
yeah, except for the Lincoln game, you got to give him credit that they did bench him for the Lincoln game. So maybe that
Stop
counts for
it.
something. I know.
Stop it.
But the other question mark for me is not even on the field necessarily, coach. Like talent wise, it's the coaching question mark. And I
Mhm.
get it. They're wanting a lot a turnover for FAM in terms of like
And
assistant.
this is no shot at
No,
Colsey.
no, no, no,
No,
no,
no
no, no,
shot
no,
at
not
Colsey now.
and it's not even Colsey per se. It's not even Colsey, and this is not true. Both of us on the show, and coach is a coach of another SWAC school, all pick FAMU to win the Celebration Bowl. At the end of the day, like that was our preseason prediction. Well, hey, let me say this: Coach picked FAM to win the East. Obviously, he had to pick a school to win the Celebration Bowl, but he picked FAM to win the East, and I picked FAM to win the Celebration Bowl last year. So I'm not going to say folks didn't believe in FAM last year, but
No, they were the odds-on favorite.
yeah, they were the odds-on favorite for everybody. Now, there might be certain places where nobody picked FAMU, and that might have been, obviously anyone who covers Jackson State wasn't going to pick FAMU. Like
But
we
I
got to
think at
stop.
SWAC Media Day they were
They were picked to win, but Southern did receive more first place votes, technically.
unreal. But that's a
Yeah,
whole nother story.
that
Okay.
a whole nother conversation about how bad that poll was. But I don't. I think everyone pretty much believed in FAMU. Like I don't think anyone really doubted them. Now I will say, coach, it's not even a head coach question for me. at the end of the day, and this is no disrespect to any offensive coordinator or offensive coaches in the SWAC, the best play caller in the conference last year was Willie Simmons. He was the best offensive coordinator in the conference. And I understand the title might not have been on the door, offensive coordinator. There was not a single person in the world who didn't think Willie Simmons was calling plays.
I mean, that's beyond what it
That's
is.
my biggest question mark.
And when I say no shot at Cozy, when we say that, not because he's the head coach now, no shot at him, but you lost a lot of the guys, like you said, with the college shirts from both sides of the ball. You lost your play caller, and then you lost a guy that was in sync, in tune with your play caller. So that alone, I think, is a big, 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 big hole that you've got to fill some way, somehow. And then they may have, Charlie Ward at quarterback next year, but will he be in tune, in sync with the guy that's calling the plays? That's going to be the difference. And, I know they lost a lot, but the way they finished is what I'm saying. That's it as far as that goes. And then, like you said, we change. Now we don't flip flop and do all that on the show, but we change our opinions from time to time.
You're supposed to. That's why we're talking in May. And that's what I always tell people. If you're doing way too early predictions and stuff changes, you got to come on the show and be like, hey, bro, stuff changed around here. Like when we get to SWAC Media Day, it could be different. The other thing, and this is a good point, let's not forget the defensive coordinator who built the Dark Cloud defense is gone.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They lost a lot in the college shirts. College shirts.
And I saw someone ask, do I not have any question marks for Jackson? Yes, I do. That's why they're not in the top 25. And that's why no SWAC team to me is in the top 25 right now, because there's two big question marks surrounding all the programs right now. And I think there's a few right there on the cusp, like I talked about, the FAMUs, the Alcorns, the Jacksons, the Alabama States, where if they string together some big wins, we change the conversation and they're probably in the top 25. Because at the end of the day, the preseason one doesn't matter. You want to be in there in November, December when the final one comes out, because that means you won the championship. So, oh my Lord. Okay. Because this might be a longer show. That's fine. What is the difference with NDSU still being in the top 10 with losing a head coach and offensive coordinator? North Dakota State was in the semifinals of the FCS playoffs last year and returns a majority of on-field talent. And the head coach they hired was what was on the staff that during the streak of all those titles.
They also bring back a quarterback who took a lot of snaps and
all the snaps.
Fits what they do. With that other guy that comes in and takes snaps as well.
Yeah.
And my stance has always been, if FAM doesn't lose anybody in the portal the way they lost those guys in the portal,
yeah.
I mean, the guys in the collar shirt, we smoking cigars at practice because we just let them guys go. But they lost so much in the key roles.
Yep.
We said NDSU has a big hole to fill with losing their receiver, their big guy. They have question marks as well. I think the difference is North Dakota State, and you correct me if I'm wrong, he didn't call plays. Coach Simmons called plays. The defensive coordinator called the defense. The position coach is the one that coached the safeties. You know what I mean? So that's the difference to me. And again, no one's crowning anyone, but I think FAM, because of what they did in the past, just like North Dakota State, should be in the top 25 at least.
And that's what I'll say. Like Coach is saying, FAM should be in the top 25. The difference is, Coach, how many head coaching changes have we seen North Dakota State make, and they just go and win another national title?
They keep it in house. I get it. FAM kept it in house.
Yeah, but it's not the same. It's like, at the end of the day, like you can't compare those two programs because, Coach, I'm looking here, almost 1,000 snaps return for North Dakota State on offense, including 2 quarterbacks that would start anywhere else in the country. outside of maybe South Dakota State. Let me
Yeah,
pause.
yeah.
Like, no one's taking Gronowski's spot, but they return two quarterbacks that would start anywhere, coach. They return a tackle who is an NFL prospect. They return a guard who played over 900 snaps. They have an NFL tight end again in Joe Stoffel. They return multiple running backs. And even though we got question marks at wide receiver, coach, Rajah Nelson and Braylon Henderson are experienced. I just don't know if
Right.
they can be the number one guys. And then on defense, you return an All-American safety who led the country in interceptions. You return a linebacker who was an All-Conference performer in Logan Kopp. You return Eli Mostert, who played significant snaps of defensive tackle. Dylan Hendricks was one of the best defensive ends coming down the stretch. And coach, on top of that, you get an All-American defensive tackle coming back who missed most of last season due to injury. That's the difference. Is that, like Josh said, they return over 80% of their roster, even with a new head coach and OC, both of which have been in the program before and were one of the reasons that they built the program.
And they
So,
lost very little in
yeah,
the transitioning senior wise, transfer portal wise. They
yeah.
lost little. Fam lost a lot of snaps.
I will say if FAM comes out, and that's the problem with their schedule. We don't count FBS losses in the top 25, or I don't. I don't hold that. Like me and you talked about, if South Dakota State loses to Oklahoma State, who won the Big 12, no one should be tanking them, for losing that game. But with FAM, if they come out and beat Norfolk and South Carolina State dominantly, I wouldn't be surprised if they're firmly in the top 25. I'll be honest, and especially because if you even and look at Alabama State, if Alabama State comes out and beats Central, and then goes back and beats Samford on the road, we can have a different conversation about Alabama State. Or look at Central. What if Central goes out there and just destroys Alabama State, who comes in with all this hype from the offseason? I think the conversation around Central changes. At the end of the day,
True.
um, it's preseason. We'll see. We still got to suit it up. I'm very interested, Coach, about some of these other preseason polls, because obviously the main media poll hasn't come out. Kevin Marshall hasn't released his for FCS Nation Radio, and like there's a lot of ones to come out. But I'm really, really excited for this season, man. I love the debate already, man. Coach, we're in May. And man, we're having an all-out debate about teams that should be borderline top 25, man. I absolutely love it. But last topic, Coach, because we're already in an hour. Let's talk SWAC Offensive Defensive Player of the Year. There was a few questions over the past few weeks about who should be the favorites for this, or who are the top candidates to be SWAC Offensive and Defensive Player of the Year. Let's start with preseason. And let's just predict that, and then we'll get into candidates who we think could have big years and possibly be the postseason ones. Coach, if you had to put money on it right now, who does the SWAC office put as offensive and defensive player of the year at SWAC Media Day?
Oh man, offensively, I'm not really sure uh, who outside of I know he didn't play with last year, but I can see them nominating Body as offensive player of the year. I get it. But the kid Mulligan from the school up the street, should definitely be in the running for that offensive player of the year preseason deal. And then defensively, I don't think there's another uh, candidate outside of a kid that in 2 years has almost put up 20 sacks, uh, umpteen million tackles. You know, I don't, you know what I'm gonna say his name, Malachi Bailey. What he's done in 2 years from the defensive end position, I think warrants a preseason defensive player of the year um, nod. Now, had Gentle not left, I think that would have been a hands down. But I like Malachi and Andrew Body because I think they've done a great job of promoting that at Alabama State. Those are my two.
Okay. I was with you, and I did some more research because I was on the Malachi Bailey train for defensive player of the year preseason. I didn't know they had a second team All American coming back down in Baton Rouge, and I would probably vote Malachi Bailey right now because he's done it for longer. But coach, give Shelby Givens for Southern had 21 tackles for loss last year.
He'll win it, no doubt about it. I mean, I don't even know. Do you call that a win for the preseason? But I mean, he'll get the nod.
That's what I was saying. If I had to vote, I would personally lean Malachi Bailey, but I think Shelby Givens is probably or Skelby or however you say it is probably going to be the preseason defensive player of the year. Coach, we know this. It's an edge rusher award. I think it's going to come down to Malachi Bailey or Givens. And I see some people in the chat. I don't think Jeremiah Williams at D tackle is going to get the job done. I just
nobody sees that dirty work.
No,
the voters don't see that dirty work.
No, because defensive tackle is absolutely one of the more underappreciated positions because you don't pad the stat box.
Yeah.
You're because listen, I think what happened, Coach, and I'm trying to think.
Let me explain it this way, because the kid at Alabama State doesn't have 2 years of 100 tackles if he don't have those two big fire plugs at the 1 and the 3, keeping him clean, if that makes sense to the people that are listening. That's why D tackles never really truly get the outside awards, because no one really pays attention to it because Bubba made the tackle. But never mind the fact that Bubba was clean, because they had to double that kid, which left Bubba, the opportunity to make the play.
And I think also too the thing that, unless you've played, because if you played offensive line, you understand it because you study a lot of D tackles. But if you've never played defensive tackle, I think there's this perception, Coach. And listen, I'm young. I know there's probably someone in the 90s or the 80s that I'm missing. To me, I saw this shift because growing up, my favorite player in the NFL was Warren Sapp. Because I played D tackle when I was younger because I was the biggest guy on the field. I changed my number to 99 because of Warren Sapp, because I was a Tampa Bay and Miami fan, because my mom's from Tampa. And so I loved Warren Sapp. Normal defensive tackles cannot do what Warren Sapp was doing and putting up those stats. A good defensive tackle is not getting all those tackles for loss and sacks. And then also it gets compounded when you got a guy like Aaron Donald come out and the dude's 20 sacks a year from the freaking nose, undersized. That's what people think of D tackles, not a normal D tackle. So, and I think me and Timothy talked about this, Coach, when we were kind of debating All-American lists. You look at some of these All-American lists, there's 9 edge rushers on the All-American list, and no one has a defensive tackle in sight. I mean, so I think people.
I think we talked about that one time before.
Yeah, you have to, and same with offensive line and All-American awards. But Coach, I think it's going to come down to Givens or Bailey. I'll honorable mention though, because I saw it in the chat. And shout out to our guy he is the Texas Southern guy, Los J. Jacob Williams is in the conversation. The linebacker at Texas Southern. He had a lot of tackles for loss, but I view him similar to Bubba. I think he's going to get overlooked. Because, Coach, if Bubba couldn't get it with the stats he was putting up, I think Jacob Williams at Texas Southern with less visibility is tough. The other number when I was playing when I played offensive line, it was 70, I think is what I went with. But when I was playing D line, I think it was 91 or something like that. But yeah, 99 was the number for D tackle. Now, offensive. Who do I think should get it based on last year's production? Because that's what preseason is. Irv Mulligan. Because if he doesn't get hurt, he rushes for like 1,500 yards. I mean, the dude was unstoppable when he was healthy. Who do I think will get it? I think it's either Miles Crawley or Andrew Bonney. It's a quarterback award. They're the 2 quarterbacks that have significant experience coming back. And I think Jacobian, if Jacobian started earlier, he'd be more in the conversation. I don't think Jacobian Morgan started enough games.
No, because he came in behind the
Jason Brown when he started.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a name. I think Jason had the same momentum coming into the season as Andrew. And then after he does that in week 0 on television, it really snowballed into something really bigger.
Yeah.
And that kind of kept him on the bench. And then when the wheels kind of fell off, it was late in the year when he got the opportunity. But I think again, like you said, and we've said this the last couple years, it's a quarterback deal. And
Yeah.
it comes down to the quarterback that had the most experience, so to speak, the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And those two are the guys. But I just think Alabama State has done a tremendous job of letting people know who their guy is, and I think he'll walk away with that.
Yeah.
Again, is
I
that an award?
Yeah, it is. Now I will say, because I see people saying Body didn't play last year. I get it, but if you remember, he was preseason second team all conference coming
Yeah,
into.
he was
So
in the
yeah,
conference, and
yeah.
that's my
So
whole thing for
he
saying.
has played. Yeah, that's why I was saying he would be above Jacobian because of his previous experience and the hype surrounding him. But if I had to put money on it, guys, Miles Crawley and Givens would be the two guys who I think have the best odds to do it, even though that might not be who I would pick. Now for postseason, I, so a name I want to throw out there, Rico Dozier. It's going to be a very, very interesting addition. He takes that spot from Bubba. Has like
Has a history
two,
of making
three
a lot of
hundred.
plays.
Yeah, a big stat guy. I think if Alabama State finds a way to compete for the East, Rico Dozier is probably going to be on a list somewhere just because of the stats he put up. He's like a 3-time all-conference selection already. I think
Mhm.
he's someone. I think Givens and Bailey, we'll just leave them in the conversation because if you're in the preseason, hopefully you have a good enough season. I want to say it's not a DB award, coach, obviously, but there's two guys, and I know one, you could just turn your camera off when I say it. Kendall Bowler at FAMU at corner, I think, is a guy who has had proven production over the years. And if he has a big year, big interception year, it's hard for DBs to win it. I'm just talking about candidates. And then Robert McDaniel. I think Robert had really, really good season at Alcorn. We'll see about a new system, but I think Robert does have the talent, coach, at the end of the day, to if he can be the guy for Jackson's defense, make a nice little run at it. Even though I think, coach, what is the stats going to have to be for a defensive back to win this award? Like what, 9, 10 interceptions or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah. I was gonna say he's gonna have 10 INTs. He's gonna have to put at least 4 of those in the box.
Yeah,
uh,
I mean, it's going to be.
something
He's got to lead the
insane.
team in tackles. I mean,
He's got to
I
return
just
some kicks and some punts.
yeah, it's going to be
Yeah,
brutal. But coach, I know who you're riding with. It's going to be Malachi Bailey for you postseason again because you're expecting a big year from him. I am too, which is why I would keep him in the conversation. Now, offensive, you know, it's kind of tough because I think it's those same 4 names we kind of talked about with Irv, with Miles, with Andrew, with Jacobian. I'm thinking around the conference. I mean, could Noah potentially work his way in there down at Southern if he has a big year? I don't know if they're going to be good enough to do that. An interesting one would possibly be one of those 2 running backs at FAM. The only reason I don't say Dean or any of them is because I think they split too many carries, coach. If you're going to win this award as a running back,
you got to be the guy.
you're going to need like 200-300 carries. Like you
Yeah.
can't split your time 50-50. And I think FAM's going to rotate too many guys in there. And that would be it. Now, coach, I know we've talked about this guy before. Jace at
I
Texas
was I
Southern.
was just about to say if Jace could limit the
Another
turnovers,
year.
if he could limit the turnovers and just have that one bad game versus us, I think he puts himself in that conversation. He has the ability. I think now it's just going to be interesting to see what they put around him because I think that's one of those programs in the conference that has kept everything close to the vest as far as what they bring it in, who they come, what stayed. That's another program that lost a lot via the portal. So I was gonna say him having one bad game versus us. If he can do the other 9 games at a high level, I think he puts himself in position. But the other problem with that award, I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you got to be in contention team wise.
Yeah.
And that would be one of those situations where I think it would be tough for him.
Yeah, because I'm
I
thinking
hope.
right now. I mean, when's the last time a player won it off a losing team?
Mm.
It's because what Jackson swept them both. when they won the conference with
2
Dion.
years in a row. Yeah.
Last year you had what FAM winning both as the conference champion. So I'm trying to think the last time they would have had to lose it because Akil Glass won it in the spring, but that season was kind of weird. So I don't think you count that because what Jordan Lewis won it.
Yep.
But they
Defensive
only
end.
play like 3 or 4 games, so I'm not going to include that. Yeah, I don't. It would be before 2019 potentially. So yeah, we'll have to do some research on that. But coach, the last topic, and this is just a quick hitter, and someone DM this to me, and I'll be honest, I've had this conversation with some coaches, and the pushback on this idea is the reaction by the fan base on why to do this, and then also some people have cited rule changes within the NCAA on why it would be hard to run this. The question was, should more FCS teams embrace a scheme like the triple option? And the question was specifically teams that might not have access to the talent or the resources to compete at the highest level. So you're looking at, Pioneer League schools, kind of like the military universities in the SoCon who used to run them anyway. Possibly even like a Valley, Bethune, someone like that. Should more teams embrace the idea of running I don't want to call it, we've got to kind of call it this, like a gimmick scheme, I guess you could say, to a point.
I'm going to say, because I think the triple is a little different than what we would call a gimmick scheme.
Yeah,
Uh,
agreed. But
so I'll
a lot
start
of
with the
people would
triple.
classify it. Yeah,
Yeah, because it's not, no one really does it.
right.
And I think with the triple, with the rule change, with the way you're able to cut, when you can cut, I think that kind of took it away. And that's when Paul Johnson and Georgia Tech went from really beating folks that they shouldn't beat to falling off really quick. So that's the problem with that. But then I would also put in that same conversation, a lot of teams do it already, but they do it from the shotgun.
Right.
So I, that's a mixed bag on that one. But gimmick wise, I think you have to have a realistic conversation with yourself, with your program, and you've got to play kind of like with high schools. You gotta do what you have in your building allows you to do. Everybody wants to go and be uh, the next hottest thing, but if you don't have that in your building, I don't think you can do it. But if you can find something that fits with what's in your building that's a little different than everybody else, I think you have to. And we kind of talked offline about non-scholarship school that has, I think, one of the best situations going. If you can get up on somebody, they don't snap the ball until it's probably 5, 4, 3, 2, and snap. You're limiting the possessions. The timing rule works in your favor as well. Now, if you go down a score, that's the double edge.
Yep.
Now what? But if you can find something, I think that works. If you remember a couple years ago, there was a high school in Arkansas
Yeah.
that he came up with his analytics that it was worth them going onside kick every freaking time. If you believe in the analytics, you do that. But I think you just have to play with what's in your program. You have to find something that's going to fit. And if I'm at one of those places, I think, we look into it. Nobody runs the I formation anymore. Is that considered a gimmick? One of those deals, true tight end, 21 personnel. But if you don't have those guys up front, you probably want to spread folks out and keep them away from the line of scrimmage. So, you have to play with what's in your building, I think.
Yeah. And I think everyone kind of in the comments is echoing your sentiment where it's, the new RPO game is kind of the new triple option.
Yeah.
Where, you can give it to the back, your quarterback can keep it, your quarterback can just toss it out to your slot guy on a bubble route or something like that. And like you have
And that's
like
not
that,
as
like
easy as it sounds.
no,
But
no, no,
neither
no,
was
no,
the
no, no.
triple. Did you play in the triple?
No.
Did you play in the wing team?
No, we ran like we ran like more like a spread, I would say. So you know, it was a more pro style because luckily even growing up, like when I throughout middle school and like late, you know, youth league ball, we had a quarterback that could throw. Which because you know that in youth league ball, if
That's
you got a quarterback
a
that could
luxury.
throw,
That's
yeah,
a luxury.
you can't do anything about that. Like if you have a kid who could throw, so we ran a dip. I never have been in a triple option offense. Now, looking at it from an offensive lineman perspective, I think, like you said, the rule changes make it really hard because now even like on like those swing screens where your offensive lineman kind of get out in space and you know you got to block a DB. Back in the day, man, you could just throw yourself
Yep,
and
you can
take
throw.
out a defensive back. Now, man, if we got to stand up, it's a lot harder for an offensive lineman to block in space to a guy who runs a 4.3, 4.4, and you're 300 something pounds out there in space. Just because as offensive
Yeah,
line, we're not good in space. That's not our strength. But come down, see us in the box, and then you aren't comfortable. But I think that's the thing is with like the Citadel and teams like that, those new rule changes really kind of limit some of
what
your
they can do.
what you can do. I mean, and also too recruiting wise, it's a tough sell to some kids.
Heck yeah.
Um,
Calvin Johnson is the outlier in that
yeah,
because he was such a guy, and they talked him into coming to Georgia Tech where they ran the triple. You ain't getting too many Calvin Johnsons to commit to that nowadays. You
no,
know, even with the rule change, they still weren't able to get another Calvin Johnson because a kid now that catches 40 balls, what am I going to go do that for when I can go up the street to Florida and have an opportunity to catch 40 in the first half of the season, kind of thing. So,
yeah,
that is an outlier. But then I think it also hurts you because if you look at the service academies, I think they get in trouble because they don't see the pass in practice. So when they go into Saturdays and they face that, it's kind of hard to duplicate any of those things that you don't do within your program on
mm,
scout team,
yeah,
which is where the triple was winning because nobody was willing to cut their own players in practice, so to speak. So the first time you see Blue coming at you and throwing at your knees was on Saturday. You can work on that ball all you want, but it ain't the same as him coming out there and really being angry
no,
and trying to get you. That's not the same. It works both ways, but again, that's just my little soapbox talk for this Saturday.
yeah. I think this conversation kind of started up again. You know, it kind of died down for the most part because of the rule changes, but. I think after especially people who watch a lot of college football, after seeing what Harding did at the D2 level,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of reopened that conversation. Like, okay, well, if they can make it work, why couldn't we, should we take a chance? And I mean, I think there might be programs that might. I just never see it becoming a
Mainstay.
yeah, no, like maybe one or two programs. I think you might see it more in the Pioneer League. I think Davidson is a program that, runs a very unique offense, but like you said, I think the game's evolved past that point to right now, especially with the rule changes. Um, we'll see though. I think it's an interesting conversation because, Coach, I'll be honest. If you're a D coordinator and you have to come out there and you see that for the first time,
It's a lot of work.
it puts a lot of listen. Your linebackers better be elite.
And if you only see it one time in your season, that's a lot of work.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like it's hard to go from we're preparing for FAMU spread offense, and now we got to defend this triple option attack who has all these weapons, misdirection, eye candy, all this stuff. And if you're looking at the wrong guy coming in motion, you're going to be late getting to your gap on the other side where you need to be, and he's going to pitch it. You're not going to be there, and it's a touchdown. Look at all the problems the Citadel gave Bama in that first half of that one. What was it like 2017, something like that? I mean, and like Kevin said in here, they were beating the Citadel. They beat or the Citadel was beating Georgia Tech, South Carolina, all these teams with the triple option.
I'll go back to as far as last season. And I think they did it be how do I put it? I think they did it as trying to find something, and A&M went down to Grambling, and that's all they did with their quarterback. Now it was from the gun, but they ran for
400
umpteen
yards.
million,
Yeah.
because that's tough to figure out on the sideline. Who's got quarterback? Who's got pitch? Who's taking a dive? And like you said, there's so much going on, and it's happening that quick. Now, why A&M didn't stay with it, I don't know. But for that particular game, in that instance, they didn't start that way. But as the game went on, they were like, you know what? Let's just go to this, and it worked.
Yeah, it did. Real quick, Coach, this will be a quick question. We'll end this show. Someone asked you when FAMU was winning the SWAC last year. Willie was at Alcorn, man. You've kind of got to see him up close. Did you see kind of the same scheme, the same formation plays from when he was the OC at Alcorn?
Yes, that's what's now he's evolved. He's added some other stuff, but his core stuff, his mainstay stuff. Yes, I did see it with the orbit motions and different things like that. I did see some of the things that we did as far as the RPO game, which was kind of cool to see, and it still put people in dilemma as far as what I'm playing for, what I'm doing, and like again, if you don't see that stuff on a regular, you got to understand that there's three things built within each play. So we could run it here, pulls it. Quarterback could run it. Someone shows up. Now, if that person shows up, that means that he's left what was in the alley, throw it in the alley. So there's some different things that he added in, but his core, I think, was still the same core that we won the national championship in 2014 with.
I like it. And Grand Key, we got you. Next episode, we'll talk a little SoCon football. We'll talk a little Mercer football. That's a good question. We kind of mentioned them earlier, Coach, but we'll do a full SoCon breakdown too. Also, conference previews are coming very, very soon, man. We're going to get Timothy on the show to join us. We're going to be previewing all the FCS conferences, giving preseason predictions, players to watch, everything that you could ask for in previews. Man, listen, hit the like button, subscribe. A great Saturday show, man. We went an hour and a half on a Saturday morning, man. So hopefully we got y'all woken up. Y'all had
and Rev. Don't play like you forgot, Rev. I'm just saying, Rev.
Tarleton is going to determine who's smoking those good cigars down in Frisco.
Eating tacos and smoking cigars. That's what I'm doing in Texas.
I like it. But guys, man, for myself, for Coach Fred, for the Bluebloods, FCS Football Central, man, we are out for right now.